Good morning to all my friends and family, and welcome to this episode of Jim's 5am Club. For those who don't know where I am, today I'm at the Fingal Spit, a spit of sand, a body of sand, a body of moving sand should I say, that connects Fingal Bay to a place known as Shark Island. So this body of sand unites Fingal Bay to that island over there, which is called Shark Island, of which it has a lighthouse on the eastern side, and there's a nice little walk through the island to get to that lighthouse. But from what you can see here, I just walked across that spit to the beginning of the path to Shark Island, and within 10 minutes, whilst it was all dry and clear and it looked like it was going to be like that for hours, within 10-15 minutes the water is just starting to lap across from one side to the other, and I dare say that within 15 minutes, half an hour, that spit will be closed again. And it's not just closed and safe to cross. I want to remind people that people have died here over the years. Many tourists have died here. People like you and I who have taken their loved ones, their families to the other side, gone for a walk, enjoyed the walk to the other side of the island to where the lighthouse is, and when they come back they see that their path, their exit path, is covered with water. So what do you do when you're in a situation like that? People tend in a silly way to take the risk and walk across. And I had a friend of mine who I worked with just recently, Steve Pemberton, who's a local up here, has a number of houses up here at Fingal Bay, say that he was walking his boxer along the spit here one morning, and as he was walking the water was rising, and he took a couple of walks onto the spit and he sunk down to his knees, and he said it was like quicksand. And it was only through his quick thinking and grabbing onto his dog's collar and calling his dog to him and calling the dog close to him, he was able to grab the collar and use the weight and strength of the dog to help him extract his legs from the sticky situation there, where he would have been potentially in danger if it wasn't for the dog. So once again, a warning to people to be careful, because nature is unpredictable. Nature changes in a heartbeat, and we don't know how quickly things change and how they disappear so quickly. So this Moses path, just like the Moses path of the Old Testament, happened in a moment, happened long enough for Moses and his people to cross from one side to the other, to cross from one side to the other, I guess is the way of putting it, to escape the enemy, and the river closed up again and drowned the enemy, the people who were chasing the Israelites. So a very, very important lesson. So as I say, today what I want to do is extend, where possible, the sub-series that I'm putting together in honour of the big man, Tony Robbins, where we can talk about the things that I've learnt over the years, the many things that I've learnt over the years, having been to 3 of his UPW seminars, 2 whilst I was in my 30s and a young father in 95 and 96, and also one that I attended this year, 2023 in place of my youngest daughter Artemis, who couldn't attend because she had something far more important to do, given that she became a first-time mother. So I attended with my eldest daughter Katerina, and we had a great time. Learned a lot of things. I took lots and lots of notes. I was very prepared this time round. I took 167 pages of notes. The notes that I carry with me. And the notes that I go through day by day, just trying to recall, to remember all of the wonderful material that was presented at the UPW, as well as the books that I have, the two books that I've studied intently, Awaken the Giant Within and Unlimited Power, two of those initial texts that the big man wrote back in the 80s, books that I recommend to anybody to read, because there's a lot of information in those books. And to be honest, his seminars, UPW, and dare I say all of his other seminars, are just extensions of whatever is written in those two first books. So what more can we say? What more can we learn? I think one of the key points in these notes that I've got is where Anthony Robbins says how important it is to measure things in your life, to compare and contrast things, to be observant, to have an eye for detail. Because here in his notes he says that if you measure it, it will get better. And the reason why it gets better if you measure it, and it's quite funny actually, because he says here that your OCD will make sure of it. And I remember working for a top tier law firm, and there was a fellow there, a systems engineer, who said to me, you know, with all the reports that I put together, he says it's important to have these reports and to measure them and to put these reports before the partners of the law firm. And he says that initially people may ignore it, but sooner or later people are going to start focusing on the numbers that compare their performance to other people's performance in the firm. And what will happen is you don't really need to do something about it, because what will happen is their own OCD will not allow them to rest on their laurels. Their own OCD will force them to do something about it, because, you know, people, some people more than others are triggered by the need to be consistent or to have consistency in their lives. And some people are driven by significance. And if you're driven by significance and consistency, and this is what a lot of sports people are driven by, what happens is you can't bear to see somebody else, one of your peers, doing better than you. And what happens in your conscious and subconscious mind is that your body and mind are in cognitive dissonance, saying, how can I let Joe Blow be better than me? And that's where the OCD kicks in. And even if you don't realise it, It's happening at the subconscious level. So for people who have significance and consistency as their driving human need, what happens is that gets loaded in, that gets shaped into their reticular activating system, their filter. So when you have those things that drive you, magically and behind the scenes, your brain, your subconscious part of the brain, as well as your conscious part, your reticular activating system, work in harmony with each other to manifest your requirements. And if something's not going right, the OCD will take over and cause discomfort. Now you see a pattern and you don't like that pattern. And for some people, they just live with a pattern that they don't like and it doesn't affect them. But for other individuals who are highly strung, who are very focused and very pedantic, then this OCD keeps on calling at them to the point where they just can't silence that voice and they've got to do something about it. And for that reason, Tony Robbins says that it's important to have a journal. It's important to write things down because there is a process. There is a system that's beyond our understanding that helps us manifest, helps us do things even while we are asleep. So, as I mentioned before in the previous vlog, I went to a seminar back in the 80s or 90s, it could have been, I forget when it was, where Tony Robbins came to Australia. And Tony Robbins was or is considered to be the father of mind mapping. He was the president of Mensa and considered to be one of the smartest people, most intelligent people in the world. And Tony Robbins talked about the fact that the brain is a tremendously complex organ and something that separates us from everything else around us. It makes us top of the food chain. It makes us the master. And he said that understanding how the brain works is going to be the next frontier of science, much more important than travelling to the moon, much more important than travelling to Mars and understanding how the galaxies work, because our internal galaxy, the brain, he says, is the closest thing to infinity. And he says that we've got two aspects to our brain or our minds, and that's the conscious part and the subconscious part. And he says that the conscious part represents maybe 5% of your consciousness, and there's another part that we're not all that privy to. It's called the subconscious, where 95% or more of everything that is going on in our lives is being processed over and over and over again with and without our permission. And that's why it's important that we are deliberate with what we focus on, what we think about as much as we can, because the brain can't tell the difference between something that is vividly imagined and something that is actually real. And that's why conspiracy theorists get caught up get caught up in the trap, I guess I could say, where they can see vlogs, they can see videos, they can see evidence of things happening. But as Tony Robbins says, if you study something long enough, if you watch someone long enough and videotape different aspects of their lives, sooner or later you will get evidence that they pick their nose. Sooner or later you'll get evidence that they're mean to other people. Sooner or later you'll get the evidence that they eat cream buns. But that evidence doesn't necessarily mean that that person is what that evidence suggests, because that person, like a Rubik's Cube, will do other things as well throughout the day. May do 95 or 99% of other things which are really good and productive and give a different impression of who they are. So depending on what you focus on will determine how you interpret or how you see certain people. And this is where the big problem is, that the conspiracy theorists take elements of things and they create fear, uncertainty and doubt. And what they then do is they start stacking those negatives, those doubts, one upon the other, until they get people believing that the world is flat. They get people believing that the government is evil. They get people believing that there are all these terrible things happening in the world and that the world is conspiring to make their lives worse. The world is conspiring to kill them off. The world is conspiring to eliminate humanity on the planet. But nothing could be further from the truth, because I have worked for government organisations, and what I've learnt is they wouldn't even know if their bums were on fire, let alone have the capacity and the capability of controlling people to the point, or for the point, of taking advantage of them. If the government does anything, it does it through incompetence. It doesn't do it through consciousness and competence, because they're just absolutely hopeless. When you take people in a politically correct environment and give them power, then they will just do things which are just dumb. They're not going to do things which are creative or positive and productive. It's just incompetence personified. So what we're getting at here is that we need to be careful. We need to be very, very careful in terms of what we think about and how we interpret things. And for that reason, for many of people in my family, for example, or my culture, we use other people. We use tools to help interpret what's going on in the world. We use the scriptures and we use the church. We have a spiritual father that'll help us interpret what's going on. We will use an accountant to give us financial advice, somebody who is honed in the skills, in the contemporary skills, and whose job is to focus on economic matters, just like a priest has a job of focusing on spiritual matters. We also rely on a doctor, a family doctor, whose job is to rely and to help us and guide us on health matters. And similarly, we have professionals in our lives to help us with relationships, to help us with our diet, to help us with our physicality. We go to a gym and we have a personal trainer, and we hope that that personal trainer is versed in the latest science of how to get the best out of one's health so that you don't injure yourself and that you maintain the vitality that you desire in your life. So what we're getting at here is that we need to be living with positive expectancy, not to be living like the conspiracy theorists in a world of fear, uncertainty and doubt, and not to infect others with our beliefs, with our uncertainties. The job of each of us is to create certainty in our life and to be bold in our actions, because Anthony Robbins reminds us that each person has a different fate, and God's delays are not God's denials. And what he says quite clearly is that we need to do the things that express our calling. We need to do things and not just fit in just to make other people happy. We all have a mission in our lives. We all have calling and callings in our lives, and we all need to do the things. We all need to express our gifts as best possible so that we can achieve the outcomes that are going to make us or help make us being fulfilled and content. But he also says that we all have a fate, and our fate depends on God's grace. Our fate depends on God's will, whether or not he wills us to have something or to do something or to achieve something. And we need to respect God's will, and we need to understand how fate works, because God's delays are not God's denials, but God's delays could be God's denials in some case, depending on whether or not what we're planning on doing is going to be of eternal benefit to our soul, and is going to be something that's going to help us grow spiritually and to work with God in order to deliver the things that are going to have the best impact on his plans. So what we're saying here is that fate is something that is really interesting. Just like we've got two fishermen on this beach here. Now you could have a beach which is full of people fishing using the same lines, the same bait, the same gear, same hook, same sinker, same everything, but positioned shoulder to shoulder along the beach here. And not all people will catch a fish today. Not all people will catch the biggest fish today. Many people will catch no fish today. But it doesn't mean that if that person comes again in the afternoon, it doesn't mean if that person or all of those people come again the next day that they're going to have the same outcomes if they're doing the same process. It just means that their fate for today is that they have a certain outcome. And that's why we need to keep on trying. We need to keep on going and to keep on testing God's will, because God wants us to work, and he wants us to work hard at achieving the important things in our lives. He didn't make people's life easy, and for many people the greatest lessons are going to come through pain, are going to come through challenge. They're going to come from being not uncomfortable. And that's why we need to continually push ourselves. We need to take the road less travelled. We need to carry our cross from day to day. Some people need to carry their cross their whole lives. They may be married to somebody who's difficult to live with. They may have a health issue, but that's a cross that needs to be carried, just like Jesus carried his cross. We all have an opportunity to show our love of God and our faith in God by carrying our cross productively, and to try and figure out and to learn what the lesson or what the key lessons are from carrying our cross so that we can live a productive life. So this is where the big man says that we need to have journals, we need to write things down, we need to measure things, because the only way you can make progress is by first being honest with yourself and asking yourself where you currently are on the spectrum of 1 to 10 within a particular field of expertise or a field of desire, and then to identify the gap between where you are and where you want to be. And the big man talks about the importance of being gap fillers in our lives, being there to fill the gap. A lot of people are lazy and don't want to fill any gaps other than the pleasure gaps in terms of where they are, and constantly seek pleasure through smoking, through drinking, through alcohol, through laziness. It's one of those big challenges, because as we know, the road to success is always going to be harder than the road to destruction. Initially it's going to be harder because you need to get over, under, through all the barriers that we have in our lives, all the challenges, and to continue to fish, to continue to try, to continue to push forward, trusting in the process, as we've said time and time again. And by keeping a journal, what we can do is we can measure and we can reflect on the things that work and the things that don't work in our lives, the things that trigger and re-trigger us, the things that cause us grief and concern. Because once you write it down, Anthony Robbins says, is that you've named it. And once you name something, then you've taken ownership of it. And when you've taken ownership of it, just like, a dog, the example of the dog that I used yesterday, the example that Anthony Robbins used. How do you own a dog? The way you own a dog is that you name it. Just like the problems and challenges we have in our lives, the things we want to achieve, we need to name them. And the way we name them is that we write them down. And once you've named something, then you can start getting it to respond to your commands, and you can start working with it and making something of it. Similarly with our lives, once we have a journal, and once we start writing things down, then we can start getting a better picture of where we are. We can start to imagine where we want to get to, and we can start then to take action, incremental, meaningful action that hopefully will get us to where we want to go, by asking ourselves the question, what more can I do? I remember working at Optus a number of years ago, and there was a girl in marketing there, and she would ask herself every single day, throughout the day, what more can I do to make this better? What more can I do to gain progress on the project that I'm working on? And I love that questioning. And she was very, very big on journaling. She was very, very big on having a list of things to get done. And she'd learned the secret of not only getting things done, but getting things done with excellence, because she would ask the right question. What more? What is the one thing that I can do now that is most productive and will help me move further along the path of what I'm currently trying to do and achieve in my professional life, in my personal life, in my relationship with my partner, in my financial life, in my health, in my physical life, you name it. All the different roles, all the different goals that she had, she would separate, she would delineate, and she would treat completely different as different projects. And every day she'd be asking herself, what more can I do to make the most of this day? What more can I do to make the most of this opportunity? What more can I do to be content? And that may be just to do nothing. That may be to relax and recreate. That may be to sit down and read the scriptures. It may mean to sit down and read a book. It may mean to pick up a phone and call a loved one and just reach out to them and tell them that we're thinking of you in your hour of need. It doesn't take much, but it takes something. It doesn't take much, but it takes something. And most people don't even understand what that something is, because they think that that something is something big, complex, and complete. But as we say, you've got to ask yourself the question and put yourself in the other person's position and ask yourself, if I was in their position, what would I need right now? What level of comfort would I need right now to make this moment a little bit better? Not a lot better, just a little bit better. Anyway, I think I'll leave it there, but thank you very much for joining me on this episode of all that I've learnt from Anthony Robbins over the years. I'm up here at Fingal Bay and just walking along the beach. You can probably hear the waves crashing in the background, and I'm just pushing my way step by step through the sand, following the gentleman ahead of me. Whoop. Just got out of the way of the water there, almost got hammered by a sneaky wave. But you certainly feel alive when you get up early in the morning. I got up today at 5:15 and I came down to the beach here. I was going to go up on Mount Tomaree, but because it was a cloudy morning and it didn't promise to be a beautiful sunrise, I thought it'd be better just to come down here and try my luck at the spit that had been closed for a number of years. The spit that joins Fingal Bay with Shark Island, the spit of sand that had been washed away in the big storms. It was either before or during COVID. I remember doing vlogs back then where I talked about how the big storms had washed away the sands, and a lot of the locals, a lot of people were saying that the spit will never ever come back, and yet the locals were always saying it will come back, just like it's come back time and time again. There's a pattern, there is a cycle to nature where we have storms, they wash away the sand, and then we have other storms which wash back the sand. It's been happening like that for time immemorial. So it's good to have local knowledge, and that's why we all need in our lives, to have a team of peers, to have people who can coach us. But in order to have people to coach you, one of the big lessons that I learned in my martial arts life was that you need to be coachable. You need to come in humble to be coachable. You need to be teachable. And not everybody who comes to a martial arts school is going to gain, because many people come in with egos. Many people come in fighting the system as opposed to submitting to the system and the process. And for many of those people, they struggle. And that's why it's important to do what you need to do in order to gain the benefits of the process. So thank you once again, and I'll call it an end to this vlog, and I look forward to coming to you again from a different place with a different message of empowerment, where we take snippets, where we take morsels from the big man Tony Robbins, and we talk about it in a productive way so that we can share the knowledge that we've been able to gain over the years, and to document it in a series of 365, hopefully 365 videos, which I plan to release and to celebrate on the anniversary of UPW sometime next year. Take care, wishing you all the best. Get the leme. Bye for now from Fingal Bay.